In this section, we're going to learn how to code HTML. So for that reason, you need to download your code editor, and I would recommend downloading Visual Studio Code because it's free and it has a lot of extensions, but you can go ahead and download your favorite one. So once you download and install the code editor, you can just go ahead and open it. So this is the welcome screen in Visual Studio Code. I'm just going to give you guys a brief tour on how to use it. So for example, if we open a folder here on desktop and call it test, so we can go ahead and drag our folder into our coding workspace and then open it. So this is the welcome screen and this is our folder. So when you hover over, like, see, this is our Explorer tab. So when you open it, you see the test folder that we created. So you can create files here and then also folders inside the folder that you've just created. So for example, let's just create a folder and call it CSS and then press enter. And then inside CSS, we can drop down it and then create another folder, call it style.css. So you realize that the language mode has changed. So the reason I really like Visual Studio Code is, for example, when you select body and then you open it, it automatically opens the curly braces for you, and then by tabbing BGC, you see the emmet abbreviations that pop up. So you can just select any of them, and then this is how you would write faster code when it comes to Visual Studio Code. But we will get to CSS later. I just wanted to show you guys. And then when the circle is a solid circle, that means you haven't saved your file. So what you have to do is press Ctrl S. So once you saved your file, you can close it here, and then we see that we created a folder called CSS. You might not have the icons here, and I'll show you how to install them. It's an extension, it's really easy. So let me just close this, and then let me just click on this tab here, and then click on the new file again and press index.html. Now we have an HTML file. And now you see that our language mode has changed to HTML. So for example, if we press exclamation and then press tab, see, I mean, the boilerplate gets automated. So this is a really good thing, again, about Visual Studio Code. And then when you hover over everything, it shows you and it explains you, and then it tells you the reference, and then you can click on it, and then it takes you to the reference tab and explains more about it if you're interested to read more. And let's open it in a browser. Two ways you can do to open it in a browser is either by right clicking and then going open in default browser, refresh, test one. So this is how you can open files in browser, or you can open it with live server. For example, you can collapse this, and that, for example, if we write h1 tag and write hello and then press save, and then we come here and then press refresh, we see hello here. So this is how you can open files in Visual Studio Code. The other way for you to open files is by live server, going to the extension tab, and let me close this and collapse this. So these are the extensions that I installed already, and you can install it. So I've installed 41 extensions: an auto rename tag and beautify. You can also install bracket pair colorizer. It's a really useful extension. Again, when you write code, it colorizes them. This is another cool extension that I recommend you guys installing. Also the color picker. So the other extension that I would definitely recommend is live server, which again, it allows you to open your servers for live and then see them in action. I'll show you guys how you can open live server. And then material icon theme. This is my favorite theme, but you can download any theme that you want. So this is how you would download your themes. And then also SVG. This extension allows you to preview SVG in Visual Studio Code. So these are the extensions that I would recommend you guys installing. But let's go back to our Explorer, and then let's go here. Let's collapse this. So the way you would open a live server is usually it either shows up here, or you can press right click and then open with live server. Now this is the normal file and this is the live server. So right now let's open another h2 tag and write test2 and then press save. See, it gets automatically updated, and this one it doesn't get updated. So this is a cool extension again. Another thing in Visual Studio Code, so you see that we created our structure, and for example if we create our index.js, now we have JavaScript here. So if we have JavaScript, it shows that it's JavaScript. And in JavaScript, for example, if you write for, it automatically completes a for loop for you. We'll get to that later, but this code snippet gets automatically generated in JavaScript. The way that you have to see and differentiate is that in here it's HTML. So for example, if we write for, it doesn't get automatically generated like we have other Emmet suggestion, because the file extension is .html. So for example, if I press tab, you see that it doesn't behave the same way. So you have to realize that. So the way that we have to do, and Control Z, by the way, is like the same thing with other design programs. It kind of undoes your action. So the other thing that we need to keep in mind is the file extension. So every file extension behaves differently in Visual Studio Code, and the way we would do it is by checking whether we enabled it. So we go here and then we can preview the file extension .js, the one that we just created, and .html. And if you double click .html, you can even open it from your own folder. Not necessarily you have to open it from desktop, but the way that you can see the extension is by going on view and option and then change search, and then you go to view again, and then you can enable the file extension here. So usually by default it's hide. So if I hide it and press apply, you don't see the file extension. So you have to uncheck this and press apply and OK, so you could see the extension. This would help you to see the extensions, and this is how we're going to create file structure here in Visual Studio Code. Usually if you don't see this tab, it's because it's hidden by default maybe, so you can just collapse this and under view tab and open it through this view tab again, folder options. So make sure you enable this in Mac version as well, since I'm using Windows. And in the next video we're going to learn how to write our first line of HTML. Alright, in this video we're going to learn about the HTML anatomy. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is the building block of website on the internet. So in other words, HTML is like the skeleton of your website. So the way you would write your HTML code is you have to open it with an opening tag, and then you have to close it with a closing tag. So it's like a less than symbol, / P, and then greater than symbol. And the opening tag is less than symbol, P, greater than symbol, and this is how you would wrap your content inside an opening tag and a closing tag. And you can write anything here, and P stands for paragraph. You can also wrap anything here as well. It can be in H1, so this would also be in H1. It can be H6, which is like heading 6. So this would be H6 and this would be H6, or it could be article. It doesn't really matter. So the structure is we open a tag, and then we close the tag here, and then we write our content in the middle. The way we write comments in HTML is less than symbol, exclamation, and then dash dash, and then the closing tag for the comment is dash dash greater than symbol. So this is how you would write a comment in HTML, and the reason we write comment in HTML or any other programming language, or like HTML is a markup language, but the way you would write comments is to make your code organized and describe it to the other developers who want to take a look at your code. So organization is key, and you have to write comments and get used to writing comments. So again, this is the opening tag of a comment, this is the closing tag of the comment, and you write your comments here. As we mentioned before, we have a boilerplate in HTML. So if we want our browser to render HTML code, as we saw that we have to first write an extension .html, and then we have to write this boilerplate. So the boilerplate kind of explains that it's doc type, which is the document type is HTML, and then we have again opening tag of HTML and then closing tag of HTML, and inside this we have head tag, and then inside the head tag we write a bunch of things and links, and we have a body tag, and inside the body tag we write also a bunch of links. And you can see that everything has an opening tag and has a closing tag. So we usually wrap our content inside the body, and we always wrap our links and meta tags inside the head tag. So what is nesting in HTML? So in HTML, nesting basically means everything is nested inside one another. So in order for you to write this, build your business, you just have to write this whole thing, which is exclamation doc type HTML, and then you have to write the HTML tag, open the head tag, open the body tag, have the title in the head tag and write e-commerce, and have the body tag open and write an H1 tag and write build your business. And then if you want the word build to be bold, you wrap it inside another strong tag. So you open the strong tag here, and then you close the strong tag here, and then you wrap the word build inside the strong tag. So this is how nesting works inside HTML. So H1 is nested inside body, body is nested inside HTML. And then we only see build your business. So we don't see any of these. We don't see the head tag, and then we also see the e-commerce, but it's the title on top of the browser. But mainly we only see the build your business in the browser. So in order for you to write H1 tags and also paragraph tag, it's simple. You just write it like this in HTML. You open the tag H1 and then you close it, and just you write your build your business or anything, any content you want, and this is how it's gonna be rendered in the browser. So let's go ahead and write our first line of HTML. So we go ahead and open Visual Studio Code. So we see a 01 HTML skeleton file here. We can just drag it. You guys can access the HTML file. It's all in the resources, and it's included in the video as well. So we open it and then open the Explore panel, and then we see a structure here. So all we need to do is double click on the HTML, and then we need to work on our HTML file. So again, you can delete everything. You can press exclamation and tab and it gets auto generated for you, but I have written this before, so no need to write it all over again. So the way we write comments is, as you can see, that we have this style.css here. So this is a link that is wrapped inside the head tag. See, this is the head tag. So if we hover over here, so this is the head tag. So we can write a comment here and then press enter. The way you would write comment is Control/, and we can go ahead in the shortcuts here, preferences, and then keyboard shortcuts, and then if you enable this record key and then press Control/, you see add line comment, toggle line comment, and this is how you could customize your own shortcuts for writing comments. So copy line down, I modified it in my own way. You can write copy line down and then find out what's your shortcut in Visual Studio Code. But again, you can customize your shortcut from file, preference, and then keyboard shortcuts. So the other thing I also want to mention is the themes. We can go ahead again into preferences and choose color theme, and then we have different color themes here. So I use material high contrast. You can use material darker, and then you see that your code would change. And you can also use this Control-Shift-P or Control-P to open this. Again, you can go ahead in shortcuts, preferences, keyboard shortcuts, and if I write Control-Shift-P, show all commands. So this is how you would show all your commands. Maybe yours is different. You can again modify it and press Control-Shift-P and then write color theme. So you can also go ahead and choose your color theme from here. Instead of going to the preference, I use high contrast, and this is how you would change your high contrast. But back to our first HTML line. So the way you would write comment is Control/, and then we write, this is our CSS style sheet, and then we click on body, and then if we want to write our H1 tag, we just write H1, and then we see the emit, and then we press tab, and then we write hello world, or go ahead and write H2 tag, build your business, and then we can have our strong tag here, and then put this build inside the strong tag, and then press save. The way we can also do it is hold Control and then press J, so we can duplicate this multiple times. And just double click here and press H3, and then it gets auto renamed. If you also downloaded the extension H4, H5, H6, and P. So this is how we write our HTML, and we press save. See, now we have the go live server here. You can either press to open it live, or you can press open it with live server here, or open it in default browser. So I'm just going to press here, it doesn't really matter. So this is our HTML result. So hello world, build your business from H1 to H6, and a paragraph tag. And this is how you would write your first line of HTML, and this is how easy it is to write HTML. In the next video, we're going to learn how to create HTML lists. So alright, in this video, we're going to learn how to create HTML lists. So in order to create HTML lists, we have to open an UL tag. UL is like unordered list, and LI is a list. So we wrap the list items inside an unordered list item. And if you want to create an ordered list item, you just write OL, and then you wrap your LI items inside the OL. And this is how it's going to be rendered in the browser. So this is the unordered list, which is UL with the bullet points, and this is the ordered list. Let's see it in practice. So we're going to have our Visual Studio Code open. So we're going to drag our 02 HTML list file here. So let's open the index.html and let's collapse this. So I wrote some comments here. So let's open our first unordered list. So we press UL, and then we press enter, and now we press LI, and then we press enter or tab. So get a haircut, and you guys remember how we duplicate stuff, and mine is Control J, yours might be different, so make sure you change your shortcut. So take a shower and work out in the gym. If the gyms are open, it's still in the COVID situation, but yeah, I need to get a haircut in COVID situation. Anyways, so this is how we get our unordered list. Let's open it in live server in browser. So this is our unordered list that we've created. So let's just put this on the left side, and then so most of the time I'm going to code like this. So you guys go ahead and open the file, and I'm going to code like this so we can see the result. So now let's create our ordered list item. So we press OL, and then we press LI again. Actually, I'm just going to Control Z and copy this. So copy, paste, save. And this is how easy it is to create your list item. And with OL, we create list item. With UL, we create unordered list item. In this video, we're going to learn about HTML attribute anatomy. So we're using an A tag, which is an anchor tag that allows us to link pages together. But the A tag doesn't really work unless you add the href attribute. So the way you would do it, you open the tag. So this is our opening tag, and then this is our closing tag. And inside the opening tag, you write href equal, and then you inside the quotation mark, you write your link. And by adding this href attribute, now you make the link functional, and when you press on the Google text, it would take you to the link to a Google website. So let's see this in action. So I've already opened the anchor tag folder. You guys can go ahead and download it from resources. So I'm just going to open the index.html file, and I'm going to collapse this. So let's create our Google link tag. So we press A, and then we have the M abbreviation here. So we just press tab, and now we see that Visual Studio Code already created a href attribute for us. And what we need to do is write https://google.com, if I can, and write Google and press save, and we see the Google appeared here. So if we click on it, it takes us to Google. So let's just press back, and now let's create another anchor tag, and this time let's go to YouTube. youtube.com, and let's write YouTube, press save. Now we have YouTube. So see, it clicks. When you click on it, it takes you to YouTube. And now let's create an anchor tag with SVG icon. I also provided an SVG code here, so let's just uncomment this out. You guys don't need to worry anything about SVGs and the attributes of like path and style and all that. We will get to that later. And so this is a YouTube SVG icon. So the way we do it is, if we copy the YouTube link here and just delete the YouTube text, and we go here, collapse this, cut the SVG icon, and let's just paste it in between. So the anchor tag opens here and then it closes here. So we just put the SVG in between and sandwich that. So save it, and then we have the SVG YouTube icon. So when we click on it, it takes us to YouTube. And this is how you create. Let me just zoom out a little bit so you see the file structure. So this is the anchor tag and this is the SVG file. So if we press enter, we see, let me just zoom out a little bit more. So this is our anchor tag, this is our SVG, and we have a path inside the SVG. We will learn about SVGs later. So this is how you can add inline SVGs and add them as hyperlinks. In this video, we're going to learn about HTML images. So HTML images are self-closing tags. That means that when you open the HTML tag img, you just close it with a greater than symbol. You don't have another tag that closes it. So when it comes to images attributes, we use src, which is source, and we use alt, which is an accessibility attribute. So for the people who use screen readers, so that would kind of describes the image if they cannot properly see it. So you can either link the image locally on your desktop or directory, or you can link it from unsplash.com or whatever free resource images you can find. And another thing to note is, if you want to link it directly from your local laptop, sometimes you use .. So .. means you have to go back one step and then go find the images folder and then go find the water slide image, and then the image is .png. So this is how you would link images. Now let's see it in action. So I've already opened the HTML images folder here, so you guys can go ahead and download it. So this is the index.html. So let's open it. We have an image img folder, and then we also have an image here. It's called mockup modal. So let's link our image first here. So we write img and then tap. So this is the auto completion. So we have source attribute and alt attribute. So let's write the source attribute, which is, so as soon as you write mo, the Visual Studio Code kind of picks it up. So we just click on it, mockup-modal-select.png. And now let's describe the image. Let me collapse this. So UX wireframe. This is one of the wireframes I created. So when you press save, you see that this wireframe shows up. I created this wireframe before, so I just wanted you guys to see how you can add PNG images to your websites. So this is how you would add it. So let's add a link, and let's call it h1 and call it page 1. Save. And now, for example, let's see if we have a link. Let's just press A, and then we want to link locally to our laptop. So we don't have a page yet, so let's just write next page. So when we click on next page, nothing happens. So let's just try to create the link and create the folder. So what we do is we go to explore and open a new folder called pages. And then instead of us writing all of this, we can either Control A, copy everything, and go to the pages and open a new file, call it design.html. Press enter, collapse, paste it, and now we have a design.html as well as, which is inside pages folder, and then we have an index.html. They're identical. So what we do is we go to our href and now we have to link it to the other page. So how do we link it? We write pages, so it completes it for us, pages slash design.html, and let's save. So when you click on this, it takes you to the other page. So let's go to our other page and write page 2 and press save. And then for this one, we need to add another image. So I have another image included. So we go img. You see nothing picks up. Why? Because we are in the pages folder and we need to go one step back and access img. So the way you would do it is you click here, and then as I mentioned before, // that means go one step back, and then this is our recommendation. So we want img, and then we want my heart. No, we want mockup landing page. So let's click on that. So if we go to our browser, I've already opened all of this with live server, so that's why it gets automatically updated, and this is why I really like to use the live server extension. So you also have to, the way you link these images and you're going one step back, you have to do it with your CSS style sheets as well and your other images folder. So let's just do it right now, // and let's press save. And when I click on next, you see it changes. But imagine if I don't add this and then press save. As soon as I remove this, you know, the style sheet, everything gets broken, the sizes and everything. So that's why it's really important to link your stuff. We'll learn about linking later as well. But remember, if you want to link your stuff, and if you are in the pages folder or any other folder and you have to go one step back to access other stuff, you use // and as soon as we press save, everything gets back to normal. Let's fix this link as well. So when we click on it, nothing happens. So we have to write previous page, and the way we go back again is // and then we want to go back to index.html and we press save. So we press previous page, we get this. We press next page, we get this. And this is your mini prototype of creating websites. I hope you guys are excited for next lectures, and hopefully by the end of this course you'll be able to build your fully functional websites and include your artworks. Alright, in this video we're going to learn how to link our HTML videos. So the way we link our HTML videos is again using the source attribute, same as the images. But the only difference is that the HTML videos have like different attributes like autoplay, loop. So autoplay, it means that as soon as the browser opens, the HTML video starts playing. And looping basically means looping through the video endlessly. And muted is when you want to loop your images, you have to also add the muted attribute and set it to true. And the reason is if you don't set that to true, the video doesn't get looped. Another attribute that you have to pay attention to when it comes to videos is plays in line, because by adding this attribute you allow your videos to be played in Safari as well, to be looped in Safari browser. And then you can also add the controls attribute. This would give your videos controls. I mean, we will see these in action. So I've already opened the HTML video folder. You guys go ahead and download it. So I'm gonna open the index.html, and we can see that there's an interaction video here. So this is a prototype that I did before. So in order to link my video on your videos, you can press H1 and then press tab, and then I'm just gonna give it a title called interaction video. Press save. So we're seeing our title here. So we just write video and press tab. So it asks us for the source. And by the way, video tags are not self-closing tag like images, so you have to add a closing video tag as well. So what is our source and where is it? So the video is in the root folder, so we don't need to go back, and the name is interaction. When I write it, Visual Studio Code notice it, so interaction.notification.mp4. So let's press save. As soon as I press save, the video gets linked, but the thing is the video doesn't play when I click on it even, so it doesn't work. So that's why we have to add the attributes. So let's add the attributes right now. The first one is controls. So if we add controls and press save, now we have the controls here. So everything starts working, but the video doesn't get looped and all that. You know, the control panel, when you can open it and play it from here by only adding one attribute. So this is how you can add the control attribute here. The other attribute that we need to write is autoplay, and then set that equal to true. So when we write autoplay true, it gets autoplayed, and the other thing is it doesn't get looped, so it just only plays once. So we know how to loop the video, so let's write loop and set that to true, and you see that the video gets played and it gets looped. So this is how you can add it. And the mute attribute, you have to also add it with loop. Sometimes it doesn't work with other browsers, so we add the muted attribute as well, and then set that to true. And the other attribute plays in line. This is for Safari. You don't see the effect here. So if you see that your videos are not working properly in Safari, just add this attribute and hopefully it works. So basically we learn a lot of attributes here when it comes to video. So we use the source to link our attributes. We use these attributes to control the state, whether we want to mute it or add the controls button here, or loop through the video and make it autoplay when the browser refreshes. And hopefully you learn how to add your interaction prototypes video to your websites and your portfolios. So in this video we're going to learn how to embed our HTML iframe. So the iframe tag allows us to embed YouTube links. So the way you would do it is you would open an iframe tag and then you would close it, same thing as the video. And then we have a source attribute. As we all know, for the images and videos, we also have a source attribute, and then we link our YouTube video. And then you notice that we have a width and height attribute. So this is the thumbnail. So we're giving an iframe attribute a width and height, which is we want our iframe attribute to look like a thumbnail. And I don't want you guys to worry about all of this because these are all generated by YouTube. But let's just jump into the action right now. So let's go ahead and open the iframe folder. You guys go ahead and download it as well. So let's just give it a heading, call it YouTube video, and let's just open an iframe tag. Okay, so as soon as you press enter, you see that the source attribute appears. So this is also another frame border attribute. We don't need to worry about that. So it asks us for a source. So I already have a source here, so I'm just going to copy it, go back to the iframe, or you can have any YouTube video, and then also give it a width attribute 560 pixels and a height attribute of 350 pixels, and press save. And this is how we embed a YouTube video into our website. So if we press play, you see that we cannot make it full screen like other videos that we had. So let's just delete this. So since we no longer need it, the alternative way is if you go to a YouTube video or any video that you have, there is a share button here. So you press on share button, and then you see you can share it any platform you want, or you can press on embed. So when you press on embed, you see the code appears here. So you just press on copy, and then you go back to your iframe, and then you just press it, and then you see that it gets, these are the attributes that we wrote before, and these are the attributes that gets auto generated by YouTube. So you don't need to worry about that. Just press save. We have the same thing. So if we press play, the video plays, and then we can open full screen view, and then you can exit the full screen view. And this is how you can embed your iframe videos in your HTML code. Alright, in this video we're going to learn how to create HTML checkbox and radio buttons. So in order to create these checkboxes and radio buttons, you have to create input tag. And input tag, as you can see, it's in self-closing tag, so you don't have another tag here. It's like an image tag, img. The main difference between creating a checkbox and a radio button is for their attribute. So you just give them an attribute type, and then you write checkbox and you create a checkbox. And then for the attribute of radio button, you just write radio in the type attribute. I just also wanted to address that we have another attribute called name. We use that name for our form submissions when we use PHP, but we're not going to cover this in this course. But I just wanted to let you guys know that we have another attribute called name. Alright, let's jump into the action right now. Alright, so you guys go ahead and download the HTML checkbox folder, and now let's open the index. I've opened this with live server as well. So we're going to give a h1 heading and write HTML checkbox, and then also another h1 writing HTML radio button. So in order to create our checkbox, all we have to do is create an input tag, which is a self-closing tag, and just press tab. Now in the type attribute, we just write checkbox. And now you can see we have a checkbox right now. And in order for you to create a radio button, just write input and fill this with radio. And now you have a radio button. And this is how easy it is to create HTML checkboxes and radio buttons when you want to create forms. In the next video, we're going to also talk about input fields. In this video, we're going to learn how to create input fields. And the way you would create input fields is as simple as creating checkboxes and radio buttons. So we create an input tag, and this time for the type attribute, we just write text, and it automatically creates a input field. And for creating a password field, we just write password for the type attribute. And you guys can see we have a label tag as well. A label is not a self-closing tag, so you have to close the label tag at the end. So you can also label your input fields by just writing label and then writing password. And you see that we have a for attribute here, and then it's named security, and the ID is security. You can name it whatever you want. It doesn't necessarily need to be security or whatever you want. The reason we just give a for attribute is when you click on the label, if the for attribute and the ID attribute matches, it would direct you to the exact input field. So that's the only reason we use a for attribute when it comes to labels. Alright, let's jump into the action. So you guys can go ahead and open the HTML input folder. Now let's open the HTML index as well. So we're going to create a heading, call it input type, and then for this one we want to have an input again, and this time we want to leave the type as text. And as soon as I press save, we can see that we created an input field, and we can just write anything we want, and then we have a submit button usually. And now let's go ahead and create a password input field. So we just write, give it a heading called password, and then we just give it an input, and this time we want it to be password. So when we save it, let's check the result. For example, you write username whatever, and then for the password you see that it's being hashed, and the reason is you just created an input field with a type password. And let's see if we create a label. So if we write label and then write my user and then call it username, and then we just write input type text, and as we saw, we just gonna give it an ID, call it my user. Okay, I'm just gonna give it a little bit of style. We will get to the HTML styles later, but I'm just gonna give the label margin top 50 pixel. This is just for demonstration. I just want to show you guys what does the label do, and then also give it a margin button. Oops, margin. If I can write it properly, 20 pixels. So you see that when we click on the input password or input type, it's not being redirected, but when we have a label, when we click on it, now we can start writing, for example, username. And this is the difference between labels and heading. So if you give it like a for attribute, so if we remove the for attribute and when we click on it, nothing works. But if we have the for attribute that matches the ID attribute, so when you click on it, it just it lets you write your username and it directs you to the input field. So that's the other thing when it comes to labels. So I'm just going to delete that and delete. We'll get to this style tag later, and then this is CSS. We'll get to that later as well. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys how you can create like username input and then password. So this is how you would create input fields and password fields. Alright, in this video we're going to learn how to create HTML dropdowns. So the way you would create HTML dropdowns is you have a select tag and then you have to close the select tag, and then within the select tags we have options. Again, option, you have to also close the option tag. So for example, in this case we're asking users what are your degree, and then if they want to answer they have to select from these options, and the option is like diploma, bachelor's, master's, and others. We already know that the name attribute is used for PHP when it comes to dealing with forms, and also the value attribute is used by PHP, but I also wanted to show you guys the value attribute as well. So it has nothing to do with front-end development, which is what we're focusing on this course. It's mostly about back-end development, but we always give value attribute and name attribute if you want to deal with forms and with PHP and back-end development. Let's jump into the action and let's create a dropdown. So you guys go ahead and open the dropdown folder and let's open the index. So we're just gonna give it a heading as usual. Call it what is your degree, and now let's create a select tag. So usually, as you see, that it auto completes it and it wants a name and an ID, but we're just going to give it a degree and then call that degree as well. But it's all about back end, but we usually use the ID attributes as well to select an item in CSS if you want to style it as well, but we don't use the name attribute. The name is, again, when it comes to a server-side language, which is like PHP mostly, or maybe it's Node. It depends on your preference. But now let's select an option. See, as soon as you select an option, it asks for a value. So we write diploma, college diploma, and then I'm just gonna copy that and put it here. Let me just make that a little bit smaller. So right now you guys can see the markup a little bit better. So we have a h1 tag and a select tag, and then within the select tag we have a option. I'm just gonna name that diploma. So as you guys remember, we have to duplicate this, so we're gonna duplicate it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So right now we have diplomas all over, so we're just gonna change this. So another cool shortcut when it comes to Visual Studio Code is, in my code editor, I changed it to Control D. So when I double click on a word and then press Control D, it selects the other matching element. So right now I'm gonna call it bachelor's. See, it automatically updates both sides. So the way you would do it, again, I'm just gonna go to the preferences, keyboard shortcut, and then record the key. Right, mine is Control D. So it says add selection to the next find match. So you can just write add, oops, let me just delete this, add selection. So yours might be different. So the way you would modify it, just modify it on your own. I like to use Control D, so let's use that for others as well. Control D, master, Control E, PhD, and then other. Oops, other. So right now we don't have college. We do have, but I'm just gonna select this and press Control D as well, and name that to university. So this is how you would do it. Again, it's a really cool shortcut. You guys can go ahead and modify it to your own. Now let's see the result. For example, you're submitting a form and it asks you what is your degree. You just click on it and then you select it, if it's master's, or if it's bachelor's, or if it's other. This is how you would create a drop down. In the next video, we're going to learn how to create buttons. Alright, in this video, we're going to learn about HTML buttons. So to create an HTML button, you need to open the button tag and then you have to close it. And whatever you put in between would be the text, or you can put an SVG icon. We'll see it in an example. And I also wanted to show you guys a class attribute when it comes to HTML. We've seen the ID attribute, but class attribute is one of the common attributes of HTML because we use classes to style HTML elements, and classes is the same thing as IDs. The only difference is you use classes multiple times per element, but you can only use ID once per element and per page. And again, the whole purpose of classes are just to allow us to select items. We can select items based on their tags or classes. We'll get to that in CSS. And another button that you see is a mixture of text and SVG icon. We'll get to SVGs later, but we see that we just put a button here and then we wrapped it inside with an inline SVG. So the SVG starts here and then it closes here, and then we have the SVG path, and this is the button that starts on top and then closes here. Now let's hop into HTML and create our buttons. So you guys go ahead and open the HTML button folder. We see that I have a commented out SVG icon. So let's first create our first button. So we just write button and then we write sign up and we press save. And this is how you would create your first button. And the second one, let's create another one called explore. And we see that we created two buttons for our HTML element. Let's see how can we put the SVG in between the explore button. So we'll just go ahead and uncomment the SVG out, and then we're just gonna cut it and then paste it here and press save. You see that we have the SVG here. So explore with an arrow icon. If you want to clean up the button, you can just clean it up here. If you wanted to make it more readable, you see we have a button tag and then we have an SVG tag. So it's the same thing. So explore with an SVG icon, and then we can, for example, we will learn that as soon as we hover over the button, we can like manipulate the SVG and then morph it or resize it, rotate it. And this is how we can use SVGs to our advantage, and this is how you create button with SVGs and just normal simple buttons. In the next video, we're going to learn how important it is to link our CSS files and also JavaScript files. So in this video, we're going to learn how to link our CSS and JavaScript files. But before that, I just want to show you guys a list of common attributes that we've learned so far. So we know that for images, we use source to link them, and we use the alt attribute to describe the image for accessibility reason. And when it comes to input, we use the type attribute to define whether it's a text field input or whether it's a password input. And when it comes to anchor tags, we use the href attribute, whether we're going to link to Google or another external file or local files, we use the href attribute. Another common attribute is classes, as we learned. We use classes to select items in CSS, and it's really common. We can assign it to multiple HTML tags. An ID attribute is also another way to select items in CSS, but as I mentioned before, the only difference between classes and IDs, one of the main differences is you can only use it once per page, the ID, but you can use classes multiple times. So now we're gonna learn about the style sheet and how we can link them. So the way you would link a style sheet is you open a link closing tag, again it's like the images, and you give it a rel attribute, and then you just write style sheet, and then you also give it an href attribute like the anchor one, and then you link your style sheet, which is is an external .css style sheet, whether it's going to be in a folder or in a root directory. You would link it with href, but you need to have the rel attribute because you need to write rel and style sheet. So this is the attribute we have to write for linking our CSS, and the way you would link your JavaScript is with source attribute, again like images, but this time we have to open a script tag and then we have to close the script tag, and then we don't need to put anything in the middle. That's really important, so just leave anything in the middle empty because we're linking it, because sometimes we write JavaScript in the middle, but when we use the source attribute to link JavaScript, we don't write JavaScript in the middle. So let's go and see it in action. Alright, let's go ahead and open the HTML linking file. So you can see that I have a JavaScript file and a .css file in the root directory, and this is our result. You see that is really ugly. So as we learned, the way we would link the CSS is with link tag. So we're just going to write link, and then Visual Studio Code is going to complete it for us. So it already gave the link a rel attribute, so you need to just link it with the href. So it's in the root directory, so we just write style. So the moment we write style, it Visual Studio Code picks it up. So I'm just going to click on it, and the moment I press save, you guys saw the difference. It's like everything totally changed, and because we already linked our CSS style sheet, so you see that we have the interaction effects. But when I click on the buttons, nothing happened because we need to also link our JavaScript. So we learned that we use the script, and then we can choose the script, but we're gonna choose the script with source. So it asks us for a source. We're just gonna write index.js because it's in the root directory as well. So let's press save, and now as soon as I click on red, the background changes, and I click on blue, the background changes. So this is how important it is to link your JavaScript files and CSS. Another note is we always link our CSS style sheets in the head, and we most of the time link our script files in the body, and which is the last element of the body. So we sometimes link our script on top, but the best practice is always link your JavaScript files at the end of the body tag and link your style sheets in the head tag. So I hope you guys understand the fundamentals of web by now. So without CSS, this is what we get. If I just comment it out, we still have the interaction, but it's not as clean and it's not as beautiful. So let me just bring back the CSS, and then we have these beautiful buttons and interaction effects. And without JavaScript, nothing's gonna work, even though everything is beautiful. So with JavaScript, we can add interactivity to our web and manipulate the DOM. So this is how CSS and JavaScript are really important when it comes to front-end development. And by now, HTML is the skeleton. Now without HTML, none of these would exist. So we just create our markup in HTML, and then we style it in CSS, and then we add interaction to it with JavaScript. So this is how are we going to approach this as we go forward. Alright, in this video we're going to talk about HTML semantics. In order to write more readable code, we use these tags instead of writing plain old div tags. So div tags are the same thing as containers. It allows us to hold pieces of our code. We will get to that later. But for example, if we want to write an article, instead of writing a div and then putting an article inside it, we can just write article. Or if we want to create our navigation bar, we would just write navigation. For example, if we want to put our navigation inside the header, instead of opening a div tag, we can just open a header tag and then wrap that around the nav tag. Or when we have footer, we can just write footer. And the reason is, for example, if people use screen readers to browse on the website, these tags would help them to navigate better, because if they have vision impairment or if they cannot see properly, and screen readers would read these as articles or as sections or as aside instead of reading as div. Like if everything on the page is div, it would be harder for screen readers to read that for kind of like people with visual impairment. So that's one of the other reasons you should use semantic tags as much as possible. So let's just go ahead and create an article tag and let's see it in action. So let's go ahead and open the HTML semantic tag folder. So we're going to open the index, and then let's create a section, and inside that section we're going to have one article. So we just write our article, and then inside that we just want to have one heading. So we just write our article 1, and then we, for example, so in order to write dummy text, you just write lorem, and then if you want like 50 characters, you just write lorem 50, and then it would generate it for you. So we have a section, and inside that section we have an article. Let's create another article tag, and then also a heading, article 2, p tag, and then write lorem 80. So we have a section tag and then 2 articles inside it, and then inside each article we have a heading and a paragraph. And this is how you can create readable HTML. Let's see the results. So I'm just gonna bring it in. So this is our result. So as you can see, if we change the articles to div, div, and then let's just open it once again. You see the results are identical, so there is no difference for the browser, and it would read it the same way. The only difference would be for screen readers. So this approach is totally fine and totally correct, but instead of writing div and holding everything inside the div container, you can just write semantic HTML, which is like divided into sections and articles, and then this is how you would write semantic HTML. So HTML meta tags are the tags that are placed inside the header, and we know that whatever is placed inside the header is not rendered by the browser. So what do we usually put inside the header? For example, we learned that we put the style sheet of our CSS inside the header. We put the title of the web page inside the header. We also put the meta tags inside the header. For example, the meta tag char set is set to UTF-8. So this is a Unicode that computer use. We don't need to worry about that, but we have to include this in our HTML files. It's necessary. So when you create your boilerplate, it automatically creates it for you. The other meta tag is viewport. So when you want to create your responsive web design, we should have that meta tag with the name attribute viewport, and then the content width equals device width, and then the initial scale of the pixels have to be 1. So we don't need to worry about that. Again, when you create your boilerplate, it automatically creates it for you. So these two tags, this is for responsiveness. We just need to know what each tag does, and this is for the Unicode. So if, for example, if you want to describe your website, you just open a meta tag and name it description, and then you put content inside it, web design and UX services. So if your website is about web design, UX services, or it's an e-commerce website, you just write a meta tag, and then inside the content you would write web design and UX services. If you want your website to be known for keywords, you use another meta tag, and this time for the name attribute you use keywords, and then you put content like UX, web design, and then you just use comma to put separation between them, so you can write keywords for your website to appear in search results. But this is not 100% SEO. It is not gonna optimize the search engine, but it's good to know that we have these meta tags available. So let's jump into the action right now and create our meta tags. So let's go ahead and open our HTML meta tag folder. So again, as you all know, that if I just delete all of this and then write exclamation, everything would be created for us. So the boilerplate always create the char set UTF-8, and also the viewport meta tag for responsive design, and also the title. So this is how Visual Studio Code creates our boilerplates, but since we have it, let's write our other meta tags. So we already know that we linked our style sheet here, we link our icon as well, the heart icon that appears on the browser. And now let's add the other meta tags that we know. So we write meta, and then inside that we just write name, and then this time description. And what do we want to describe? We just want to describe content. Oops, content. What content? Like web design services and UX services as well. So UX services. So this is the way you would describe your website as well. And another meta tag that we learned is the keyword. So let's just open a meta tag. And by the way, meta tags are self-closing tags. So we open a name attribute, and then we just write keywords. And here we just write content, and just write UX web UX, comma, web design, comma, web development. So this is how you would create your keyword meta tag and your description, and again these would be automatically generated for you. And again, we already know how to create our style sheet and link them. I'm not gonna open anything in the browser because it would give us an empty page with no content inside, because this is rendered by the browser and it's not going to appear on the web pages. So now you all know that why do we always have these two meta tags and also the link tag as well, because we're going to link our style sheet. We want the website to be responsive, and then if we want our icon to appear, we use that shortcut icon and then type image/png, and then we give it a href attribute. So this is basically what it goes inside the head. So what is external style sheet? So external style sheet holds the least specificity power. This word always gets me, it's killing me. So we already know that this is how we link our style sheet, but exactly what goes behind the scene, this is what goes behind the scene. For example, if we have an h1 tag and we want to color it, we just go inside the h1 tag and then open it with curly braces. We'll get to CSS later, I don't want you guys to worry. And then we declare some properties, and this is how we style element behind the scene with external style sheet. And why do we say least specificity power? Because because you can override these styles inside the HTML, but that's not the best practice. So let's go ahead and see it in action. So let's go ahead and open the index file from external style sheet folder. So we see that we have a UL tag with an 3 list element inside, and then we already linked our style sheet here. So if we comment this and save it, you see everything gets broken. So we're gonna uncomment that and then go inside our style sheet and then see what's going on. I don't want you guys to worry all about any of these, don't worry at all. So let's scroll down to the UL and LI. So this is what we gave our list element. Don't worry about anything, I'll explain all of these later in CSS. So we gave it a font size of 36 pixels in the style sheet, and this is what it's being applied on the browser. So if we want to overwrite that, for example, we can come here, open a style tag, which we'll get to later, and select all these, and then give this font size, for example, 5 pixel. You see it got like super tiny, and this is what I meant by style sheet, external style sheet. So we'll get to that later in the next lecture. So I just want you guys to know that the external style sheet holds the least specificity power. So if you write anything inside the head tag, it overrides whatever styles you had in the style sheet. In the next video, we're gonna learn how to create a style tag that we've already seen here. So in this video, we're gonna talk about the style tag that we usually put inside the head. So as we can see that in order to write styles inside the head, we have to open a style tag, and then we have to close it, and whatever is in between the style tag is CSS code. So if we have headings here, we can select all of them with H1 and then give it a red color. and in the browser they would both be red. But as we can see that one of them is blue because we gave it another inline style which holds the more specificity power, which we'll get to that later. So let's see that in action in the browser. So let's go ahead and open the HTML style tag. So we have our same list again. So if we go ahead and open a style tag and write li and give it background color yellow, so you can see that the whole background of the list items is yellow. So this is how we write styles inside the HTML. But again, this is not a good practice, and I just want to show you guys that if we delete the style tag, it's going to be invalid code. So nothing's going to work and it's going to appear as a invalid code. So that's why we need to always put the style tag when it comes to styling our elements inside the head. But when it comes to CSS, you guys can go ahead and write CSS without having the style tag open. In the next video, we're going to learn about the inline style tag. So in this video, we're going to talk about the inline style attribute. We already know that the inline style attribute holds the strongest power. I'm not going to say that word, specificity. And the way that we write it is we write the style attribute and then we declare CSS inside it. It's the same thing in the CSS code, but we don't have the style tag. But if you write these type of style, it gets the highest specificity power and it overrides anything you have on your CSS style. So it's the best practice to avoid that as much as possible. Alright, let's jump ahead and see that in action. So let's go ahead and open the inline style folder. So in order to, for example, style our take a shower list, the second one, we just write style attribute and then we just give it a color. And again, you can write red, but you can see that the Visual Studio Code also highlights it as a purest red, FF0000. So we're just gonna stick with red this time. So we can see that we already changed the color of take a shower in our second list. And if we go above, and let's try to see it in action, if we select all of these and then give it a color, now this time yellow, and save it, you see that everything is changed to yellow except the second list. And again, the reason is you applied an inline style. An inline style holds the strongest power, so you cannot override them. Again, best practice is to avoid that inline style attribute as much as possible. The only way to override that, is we'll learn that later on, is to give it a important declaration as well. So if you give it an important declaration, it overrides even the style attribute here. But again, this is also a bad practice, but we'll get to that later in CSS. The whole reason that I talked about the external style sheet and the style tag and the inline style tag is to show you can style your HTML elements in 3 different ways, and the best practice is always to style them in the external style sheet and avoid styling them with the style tag inside the head tag, and also avoid styling with the style attribute. So these 2 practices, this one and this one, should be avoided as much as possible unless there are some exceptions. But again, best practice is we have to create a CSS folder and then put our style.css inside that, and then put whatever style we have inside that CSS style sheet. In this video, we're gonna learn how to import custom font inside our website. It's really easy, and one of the best resources out there is Google Fonts. So you would go to Google Fonts, and my favorite font is Roboto as always, but they have categories of serif and sans serif fonts that we talked about, monospace fonts. You can filter them. For example, if I really like Roboto, I would just click on it, and if I want to choose different styles, I can choose thin, regular, and then bold. These are the numbers that I was talking about before in the typography section. So for bold, they have 700, and then medium, they have 500, thin, they have 100. This is how you would declare fonts in CSS if you want to declare their weight. And the way you would embed them, you go click on embed, and there's two ways. You can either copy this, let's copy it, and then we go inside our, I've already opened this, the HTML linking fonts. You would just paste it before your style sheet. So you would just come here and then paste it. This is how you would paste your fonts here. The other way you would import your fonts is you would go here and then you would import them. You don't need to copy the style tag, you just need to copy the import tag. So you're just going to copy it and go to your CSS style sheet and then import them on top of the style sheet. So there are two ways. You can stick either with this or importing it here. It depends, it's up to you. So this is how you would import fonts inside your website, and again we will talk about that later on in the CSS. But the way you would declare fonts is you would have to declare them with font family, and then you would give the font that you chose from Google, and then you would give them, if it's a cursive font that you chose, you would give it a fallback font. If it's a monospace font, or if it's a serif or sans serif font, it depends on whatever font you chose. So as you can see that I imported this font, Amatic, and then Lobster, and as well as Playfair Display, and then Roboto, and then I declared these here as well. So I wanted to, don't worry about this, we'll get to CSS selectors later. I want my first heading to have a Roboto font, my second heading to have a Display Fair font with serif fallback, my third one I wanted to have a Lobster font, my fourth one I wanted to have DM monospace font, and my other one I wanted to have a Matic font. So let's see the result, and these are the headings. And this is how you could have your custom fonts in your website. The way you have to do it, again, you go to Google and then you select your fonts, you select your styles, and again the way you would embed them is using the import in the CSS or link them. And this is how you would again embed them, the font dash family, inside the CSS. Alright, in this video we're going to talk about the block level elements. So when it comes to HTML elements, we have two types of elements. Block level elements usually are H1 divs, and we'll see them in action in a bit. But I just wanted to show you guys how it looks like in the browser. So you would, for example, if you want to build your business in H1 tag, this is how it appear in the browser. I highlighted this yellow box around it because this is invisible. You don't see it unless you hover over it in the browser, and we're going to learn about the Google Chrome dev tools in this video as well. Basically, block level elements span across the whole screen. And for example, if you want to put another H1 element next to it, you cannot. And the reason is it's block level, it spans across the whole screen, so you cannot have two H1 level next to each other. You can use CSS to modify the display properties, but we'll get to that later. But in the meantime, when we have block level elements, that means you cannot place anything next to them because they span across the whole screen, and the only way is modifying the display property in the CSS. So let's see it in action. Alright, let's go ahead and open the HTML block level folder. So when we open the index, we will see a UL tag with bunch of LIs. And we also see heading tags with p paragraph, and also a div, a nav bar, section, footer, header, main, and aside. So let's see how they behave in the browser. Let me open it with live server. Okay, so as you can see that get a haircut, the list element spans across the whole screen, and then we have a UL, which is the one behind it, and also take a shower spans across the whole screen. The heading, build your business, span across the whole screen. I am a dev, navigation, section, footer. So you see that everything spans across the whole screen. And the reason is it's really crucial for you guys to know that when it comes to layouts, we have to treat elements as block level elements and also inline elements. So the way you would inspect the element is you have to use Google Dev Tool. So you would right click and then you press inspect. You can see that a inspect menu pops up. Yours might be different. The way you could do it is either dock it on the right side or down below, or you can put it on the left side, or you can even just take it out. And let me just zoom out a little bit. So this is the Google Dev Tool, and again, if you want to change your theme, the way you would do it is go here and change light theme. So yours might look light, but I kind of like the dark theme, so I'm just going to choose dark, and I'm gonna put it on the right side. So we can see that this is the HTML document that we had in our code editor. We had a header, and we also have a body, and which is all these elements. As you can see, when I press on the inspect tool, I can hover over each element and it highlights them for me. And this is when it comes to developers, we have to inspect elements like that. So when we highlight over the H1 and click on it, we see that it's being selected, and we see that it is a block level element. And the way we could see it, if we expand this menu, we see that there are some bunch of styles that is applied to this. And if we go to the computed section, we see that the box model, we'll get to the box model later, but we see that this is the width, and this is the padding, and this is the, it has no border, and we have a margin. When it comes to a element, any element on web browser, any HTML element have box model, and it follows box model rules. And this is how you can inspect element in Google Chrome. And again, we have to pay attention to three important things. One is this area that shows us our actual HTML document. Another one is the style area that we would use when it comes to CSS, and we can see what are the states, and if it's a hover state, we can check that as well. We can come to the computed section and check whether each property, what's the margin when it comes to a box model. And we also can inspect the elements with this tab and then hover over them. So we already know that every element have a box model, and then the width is the blue one, and the green one, when you hover over it, it's the padding, and the orange one is the margin. So everything is consist of a box model. So this is how you can hover over elements if you want to see, and you see that it's being across the whole screen. Even if I take this out and then click on inspect again, we see it takes the whole thing in the browser. You cannot put any element next to it. And this is how you could inspect elements in Google Chrome. We also have console. Console is for JavaScript. We'll get to that later. And we can also toggle device toolbar. So this is another way you can check the responsiveness of every single device, and you see everything is spanning across the whole screen. And when it comes to responsive design, we always use that tool. So again, we use this for responsive tool. We use this to inspect elements. Get yourself familiar with it. I usually put it on the right side, and this is our HTML document window. We can inspect elements here, and this is our style document. If we just see it here, if we, for example, select another element, take a shower, we have different styles that are applied to it. So you can inspect elements here. You can check the responsiveness here as well, and you can check the box modeling and the computed way of how everything is calculated here. And this is how you would use the DevTools in Google Chrome. Every browser has DevTools, but for this course, we're going to use Google Chrome DevTools, except when it comes to CSS Grid, we're going to use the Firefox DevTools, and we'll get to that later, but get yourself familiar with the DevTools a little bit. Alright, in this video, we're going to learn about the inline level elements. So we have block level elements that we talked about before, and inline level elements are the one that would only take the available space that they have. So we have anchor tag, and we write about me, and if it's going to be a link that you click on it and it goes to about me page, and the link on the browser only takes the available width. Span elements are another inline level elements. For example, you can put the span element even inside the about me element and then wrap it around the about and make it bold, or make and style the about differently. And again, I am a span. Span level elements also take the available width and they don't go across the whole browser. And let's jump into the action and see a few examples of inline level elements. So we're gonna go ahead and open the inline level folder. We see we have a anchor tag that links to Google, and we have a span tag, and we have a label as well that is written password, and then we have an input as well that is type password, and then also we have a for attribute as I mentioned before. So when you click on label, it's going to direct you to the input because the ID matches the for attribute. And then we have a button as well, and we have images and also a paragraph tag. But we know that the paragraph tag is a block tag, but I just want to show you guys the other inline elements. And then we have an EM tag, which is emphasis, and like in other words, italic. And we have a strong tag, which is bold when it comes to creating inline level elements. So this is again inline level, strong tag, EM tag, and you can even wrap span inside it. And you can wrap, for example, the word however I have, and then wrap that inside the span and then style it differently in CSS. So these are the few examples of inline level elements. Let's see that in action. So you can see we had a Google link. If we click on it, it goes to Google, and then we have a span as well. So you see that it's being wrapped next to each other, and this is again the behavior of inline level elements. And again, we can change it with display property when it comes to CSS, but this is the label. When I click on it, it directs me to the input field, and I can write the password. And this is the button. Again, input fields, buttons, they are inline level elements, so they don't go across the whole screen. And this is an image. I just designed a hexagon just for random, and I just put it there, and you can see that images only take the available space, they don't go across the whole screen. And we have a paragraph. We see that paragraph behaves differently and it goes across the whole screen. But we have a EM tag, and we have a strong tag, and we have another strong tag and another EM tag. So these tags again are inline elements as well. And then you can have a span tag, for example, wrapped from this word until this, and then wrap it in with the span tag and then style it differently. So this is how they behave. Even when we shrink the browser, they don't go on the next line. They usually do, but the thing is, I mean, this is a really bad layout. We're gonna fix all of these. We're gonna learn about layouts and why layouts are really important. And this is the image that I was talking about. It's a pattern image, like a hexagon design image. The whole point is you have to differentiate between the block level elements and inline level. And when we inspect, we see the anchor tag here, and then the anchor tag have a bunch of styles applied to it. And if we want to make it block level, we just write display block, and this is how simple it is. We'll get to that later. To make a span tag a block, you see that now the Google link that we had before took the whole screen, and then you realize that the style is gone. Why? Because the reason is we applied these styles directly with the Google DevTools, and then applying styles here is temporary, it's not going to be permanent. And the way you have to apply styles is in the CSS, and you can turn block level elements into inline, you can turn inline elements to block, but you have to know the behavior of each element before modifying and manipulating the styles. And in the next video, I'm going to talk about the box anatomy and hopefully summarize everything we've learned. Alright, in this video we're going to summarize everything that we've learned so far. So in order to create something like that, so I've designed this in Affinity Designer. You can design this in Figma or Adobe Illustrator or even XD, it doesn't matter, or even Sketch. The way we design it is we just draw one box, give it a box shadow, and draw another box, write a sentence here, and draw an icon, give it a bunch of paragraphs and a heading, style them differently, and then we have our card. This is how simple it is. But when it comes to developing this simple card, there are lots of things that goes behind the scene. So first you have to create a container that holds all these items, and then you have to give it an h1 heading, and this heading has to be inside that div, and then you have to give it another h2 heading, which is the subheading, and then you have to give it a paragraph that is inside that div, And then you have to wrap these three inside another div and then put that div inside that div. So see, everything is nested inside a box, nested inside a box, and nested inside the box. And now, so we have one parent div and then one child div that holds these three items. And then we have another div that holds the button and the anchor tag, which is a link that takes you to another page, and the span tag, which is a SVG icon, or it can be an SVG inline element. And so we have two divs that are the child divs inside the parent div. So let's see that markup in action. If we go ahead and open the box anatomy folder, we have a index.js, CSS, and HTML. So we're just only gonna focus on the HTML part. So to create that card design, you have to have a parent div, which is the card, and then we have to have a card body. We'll get to the classes later in CSS, don't worry about whatever you see. I just want you to pay attention to the markup. So we have the card, which is the parent container. We have the card body, which is the H1, H2, and P. And then we have the card button, which is the anchor tag. And inside that anchor tag, we have an SVG. And this is the second child. So we have the button card, and then the body, and then everything is wrapped inside the card. So this is hopefully what you've learned in this by the end of this course, and you'll be able to create something like that. And we style it with CSS. So let's go ahead and open it in live browser. So this is just the image we exported, and this is the mockup that we designed in a vector design software. And this is the actual prototype that we've designed that actually works and it's functional. Even the hover effect and when you hover over the card. So basically, in a nutshell, this is the HTML markup, and there's a lot of things that goes behind the scene. We know that the HTML markup is not the only thing. So for example, if we delete the CSS and then if we open it once again, this is the actual card that we have, and it's ridiculous. So let's get back the CSS and open it once again. CSS saves our lives. So again, you see when I click on it, the background changes. I added another JavaScript to it. So just wanted to show you guys, with JavaScript you can add interactivity. With CSS you can add these hover styles and then effect, and then style the card really beautifully, and then make everything functional. So what we summarized is we have to first create the markup, and then we have to understand the box anatomy and then how every element behaves, and then hopefully we will learn about the CSS and how can we style it, and then lastly we learn about JavaScript and how can we morph SVGs, and then how can we add interactivity and interaction to our pages.